Elena smelled vodka before she felt it. Cold liquid splashing across her 7-month pregnant belly. Then heat, flames racing up her gown while 300 people watched in horror. Her husband, Marcus, stood 15 feet away. He didn't move to help her, but it wasn't the fire that destroyed Elena. It was what the woman holding the lighter whispered as she burned. He paid me $50,000 to do this. Ask him about the life insurance. In the next 72 hours, Elena would discover that her 8-year marriage was a lie, that she was selected, not loved, that her husband had been planning her death since the day she got pregnant. But here's what Marcus didn't expect. Elena's father wasn't just rich. He was the kind of rich that makes powerful people disappear. And Elena? She wasn't just a victim. She was about to become the most dangerous woman in Texas. What happened next sent shockwaves through high society, put 3 people behind bars, and exposed a conspiracy that had been destroying families for generations. Stay with me until the end, because the twist at the 70-minute mark, even I didn't see it coming. Story value and meaning. This story carries a powerful message for every woman who has ever doubted herself. Trust your instincts. That quiet voice inside you that whispers something is wrong, that feeling is data. Don't dismiss it. You cannot love someone into being good. You cannot sacrifice enough to make someone value you. The only thing you can control is how you respond when they show you who they really are. And remember this truth. They may try to burn you down, but fire doesn't just destroy. Fire transforms. Fire refines. Fire creates something stronger than what existed before. If Elena's story resonates with you, if you've ever felt trapped, gaslit, or made to feel crazy for trusting your own perception, know this. You are not alone. You are not imagining it. And you deserve to be believed. Elena smelled vodka before she felt it. Cold liquid splashed across her 7-month pregnant belly, soaking through the emerald green silk of her maternity gown. For one confused moment, she thought someone had spilled a drink. An accident at a crowded charity gala. These things happened. Then she felt the heat. Orange flames raced up the fabric of her dress, climbing her pregnant stomach like hungry fingers reaching for her throat. The heat was immediate and agonizing. Her skin screamed, her lungs seized. Elena screamed too. Her hands flew to her belly, some primal instinct overriding every other thought. Protect the baby. Save the baby. Nothing else mattered. 300 people watched in frozen horror. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, indifferent to the woman burning beneath them. White roses on every table perfumed the air with sweetness that mixed sickeningly with the smell of scorched silk and burning hair. Elena saw her husband Marcus standing 15 feet away. Their eyes met through the flames. He did not move to help her. The woman in red, the one holding the silver lighter, leaned close enough that Elena could hear her whisper over the roar of fire and screaming guests. He paid me $50,000 to do this. Ask him about the life insurance. Then strong arms tackled Elena from the side. Her father's security chief, Derek Coleman, slammed her to the marble floor and rolled her body beneath his, smothering the flames with his jacket. White foam from a fire extinguisher covered them both, chemical and cold. Elena's hands pressed against her stomach, searching desperately for movement. Please kick. Please be okay. Please, God, please. The baby kicked hard, angry, alive. Elena sobbed with relief so intense it hurt worse than the burns. Sirens wailed outside. The elegant charity gala had become a crime scene. 300 phones recorded everything. And Marcus Hartwell, the man Elena had loved for 8 years, the father of her unborn child, just stood there with a face she no longer recognized. Not shocked, not horrified, calculating. That was the moment Elena Mitchell understood the terrible truth. Her husband had not frozen in panic. He had frozen in disappointment because she was supposed to die. Let me take you back 3 weeks, before the fire, before everything changed. Let me show you the warning signs Elena ignored, the red flags she explained away, the quiet voice inside her that screamed danger while she convinced herself she was being paranoid. Because here's the truth, no one tells you about betrayal. You almost always know before you know. Your gut sounds the alarm long before your brain accepts the evidence. The question is whether you listen or whether you do what Elena did. Make excuses, doubt yourself, stay. 3 weeks before the gala, Elena Mitchell sat in her obstetrician's office at 7 months pregnant, exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with growing a human being inside her body. She had been having nightmares again, dreams where Marcus watched her drown and did nothing, dreams where she called his name and he turned away. Pregnancy dreams are normal, she told herself. Hormones make everything feel dramatic. But some part of her knew these dreams were not random. They were her subconscious screaming what her waking mind refused to hear. Elena was 34 years old, a high school art teacher in Austin, Texas. She loved her students, her small classroom covered in their paintings, the way teenagers lit up when they discovered they could create something beautiful. She had never wanted her father's money. Robert Mitchell had built his construction empire from nothing, and Elena respected that, but she wanted to build her own life on her own terms. That independence was what attracted her to Marcus Hartwell in the first place. They met at a coffee shop 8 years ago. He was a young corporate lawyer, ambitious and charming, with a smile that made Elena forget her own name. He did not care that her father was wealthy. At least, that is what she believed at the time. Marcus seemed to love her for herself, for her passion for art, for her terrible jokes, for the way she cried at commercials about dogs. They married 2 years later. Small ceremony, beautiful vows. Elena thought she had found her person. She was wrong. The cracks started small, so small Elena barely noticed them forming. Marcus worked late more often. He stopped asking about her day. When she talked about the nursery they were planning, his eyes went distant, like he was already somewhere else. And then there was the perfume. Elena first noticed it 6 weeks ago. Marcus came home from a late night at the office, kissed her cheek briefly, and headed for the shower. But not before Elena caught a scent that was not hers. Something floral and expensive. Something that clung to his collar like a confession. She told herself it was nothing. A female colleague who hugged him goodbye. A client who wore too much fragrance. There were 1,000 innocent explanations. Elena chose to believe all of them. Her best friend Donna Brooks was the only person she confided in. I feel like I'm going crazy, Elena admitted, over coffee. He does everything right, says the right things, but when I look in his eyes, Dana, it's like he's already somewhere else, like he's waiting for something. Girl, you're growing a whole human. Of course you're emotional. Marcus adores you. You're right. I'm being paranoid. Next I'll be checking his phone like those crazy women on reality TV. Dana laughed. Please, you're too classy for that. Also, his password is probably something stupid like 1234. It's actually our anniversary date. Dana's eyebrows rose. How do you know that? I may have tried it once. Nothing suspicious, though. Just work emails and a weird amount of golf articles. Elena paused, frowning at her coffee cup. Who reads that many golf articles? They both laughed, and Elena pushed her doubts back down where she had learned to keep them. Everything was fine. She was being dramatic. Pregnancy hormones were making mountains out of molehills. But here is something Elena's therapist once told her, advice she should have remembered instead of dismissing. Your gut knows things your brain has not caught up to yet. When you feel unsafe, even if you cannot explain why, that feeling is data. Do not dismiss it. Elena dismissed it. 2 weeks before the gala, she could not sleep. The clock read 2 in the morning. Marcus was snoring beside her, or pretending to snore. Elena was never quite sure anymore which of his behaviors were real. She told herself she was just getting water. But somehow she ended up in Marcus's home office, his laptop open on the desk, her fingers typing their anniversary date before she could talk herself out of it. The password worked. At first, everything looked normal. Work emails, calendar appointments, those inexplicable golf articles. Elena almost closed the laptop, almost convinced herself, once again, that she was being paranoid. Then she saw the folder labeled simply with the letter A. Inside were emails, hundreds of them, messages to someone with an address she did not recognize, conversations going back 18 months. Elena's hands trembled as she scrolled through them. Photos, explicit photos. Marcus with a younger woman, blonde and beautiful, wrapped around him in ways that left nothing to imagination. Elena's dinner rose in her throat. But it was the final message that shattered everything. Sent just 3 days ago. 3 more weeks. After the gala, everything changes. Be patient, baby. Soon we won't have to hide anymore. The response came within minutes. And what about her? And the baby? Marcus's reply was 3 sentences that would haunt Elena for the rest of her life. Let me worry about that. I have a plan. Trust me. By the time this is over, we'll have everything we deserve. Elena dropped the laptop. The sound was loud in the silent house. But Marcus did not stir, did not wake, did not come to check on her. She sat on the cold floor of his office, 7 months pregnant, hands cradling her belly, and faced an impossible choice. What would you do in this moment? Confront him? Run? Call someone? Elena did what too many women do. She closed the laptop, crept back to bed, and convinced herself there had to be an explanation, that she was misreading something, that the man lying beside her could not possibly be planning something terrible. Here's the truth no one tells you. When you find evidence of betrayal, your brain will try to protect you by creating doubt. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it is not what it looks like. This is called cognitive dissonance, and it is your mind trying to protect itself from pain. But doubt is not protection, it is delay. The truth does not change just because you are not ready to see it. Elena was not ready, so she pretended she had never seen those emails, never read those words, never discovered that her husband was counting down the days until after the gala when everything changes. She had no idea what those changes would cost her. She had no idea that in 2 weeks she would be on fire. The night of the charity gala arrived with the kind of perfect Texas weather that made everything feel possible. Clear skies, warm breeze, stars beginning to appear as Elena and Marcus drove toward the Austin Grand Hotel. Elena wore an emerald green maternity gown that her best friend Dana had helped her find at a consignment shop. They could not afford a designer dress on a teacher's salary, but Dana had an eye for fashion and a gift for alterations. The dress fit beautifully, flowing over Elena's 7-month belly like water over stone. For the first time in months, Elena felt almost beautiful. "You look like a pregnant goddess," Dana declared when she arrived to do Elena's hair and makeup. "I look like a fancy avocado." An expensive fancy avocado. Very Whole Foods. "I can't breathe in this thing." Beauty is pain. Also, the Spanx situation under there. We don't talk about the Spanx situation. Dana laughed, and for a moment everything felt normal. Like Elena was just a pregnant woman getting ready for a party. not someone who had discovered her husband's secret email account 2 weeks ago and told no one. Poomt. She had almost convinced herself those emails meant nothing. Almost. The Austin Grand Hotel was Elena's father's crown jewel. Robert Mitchell had built the venue 20 years ago, and it hosted the most prestigious events in the city. Tonight's gala would raise money for children's literacy programs, a cause close to Robert's heart ever since Elena's mother taught him to read as an adult. He had been illiterate until age 25, a secret shame that drove him to ensure no child would struggle the way he had. 300 guests filled the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. White roses covered every surface, their sweetness almost overwhelming. Politicians mingled with socialites. Old money pretended to tolerate new money. Everyone smiled with teeth that cost more than Elena's annual salary. Elena spotted Marcus across the room within minutes of arriving. He was talking to a woman in red. Young, maybe 26 or 27. Blonde hair. Perfect makeup. She laughed at something Marcus said, her hand touching his arm with familiar ease. Elena's stomach dropped. She approached before she could talk herself out of it. The woman did not flinch at Elena's arrival, did not step back or look guilty. Instead, she smiled with sweetness so practiced, it had to be fake. Elena? This is Amber Sullivan, our new associate at the firm. Amber, my wife. Mrs. Hartwell. Amber's voice dripped honey. Congratulations on the baby. Marcus talks about you constantly. Something about that tone. Too sweet. Too polished. The hair on Elena's arms stood up. Thank you. I don't think Marcus has mentioned you. Amber's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Well, he's been very busy at work. I'm sure. Marcus grabbed Elena's arm, pulling her away with more force than necessary. His grip left marks she would find later. What was that? His voice was ice. What was what? You were rude. She's an important colleague. I was perfectly polite. You had that tone. You know the tone, I mean. Marcus, Can you try not to embarrass me tonight, please? For once? He walked away before Elena could respond, leaving her standing alone in a sea of strangers, wondering when her husband had started speaking to her like she was a problem to be managed instead of a person to be loved. Did you catch that? How quickly it became her fault, how she was embarrassing him by having a normal reaction to seeing her husband with another woman. That is not communication, that is control. Elena escaped to the bathroom to compose herself, splash cold water on her face, remind herself she was imagining things. Everything was fine. Marcus was just stressed about work. The door opened behind her. Amber Sullivan walked in, that red dress like a warning sign Elena should have heeded. We need to talk about Marcus. Elena's hands tightened on the sink. Excuse me? I'm pregnant too. 3 months. The bathroom tiles swam. Elena gripped the marble counter to keep from falling. He said he was going to tell you after the baby was born, that he was waiting for the right time. Amber's voice cracked, and for a moment she almost seemed human. But I'm done waiting. I'm done being his secret. She held up her phone, text messages, photos, dates going back 18 months, before Elena even got pregnant. He told me you were basically separated, that you were only staying together for appearances, that your marriage was dead. Amber's eyes searched Elena's face. Was any of that true? Elena could not speak, could not breathe. The baby kicked frantically inside her, responding to her distress. I didn't think so. Amber's voice broke. He played both of us. For one long moment, the two women stood in silence, mistress and wife, both pregnant, both betrayed, both realizing they had loved a man who did not exist. Elena looked at her reflection in the mirror. Pregnant, exhausted, humiliated. The father of her child had been living a double life for 18 months, and she had known. Some part of her had always known. "How long have you known the truth?" Elena whispered. "About me? About us?" "6 weeks. I found cards you sent him. Birthday cards signed your loving wife. He told me they were from his mother. And you kept seeing him? I love him. I thought if I waited, if I was patient, he'd choose me. Get out." "Elena, get out before I do something I regret." Amber left. Elena sank to the bathroom floor, green dress pooling around her like water, and cried for 5 minutes straight. Then she got up, washed her face, made a decision. She was done hiding, done making excuses, done protecting a man who had built their entire marriage on lies. Elena walked back into the gala with her head held high. 300 people, cameras everywhere. Her father at the podium, giving a speech about literacy and second chances. She found Marcus at the bar, laughing with colleagues, pretending everything was fine. "We need to leave. Now." "Elena, I'm in the middle of—" "Your pregnant mistress just told me everything in the bathroom. So we can do this quietly, or I can tell all 300 people here what kind of man you really are. Your choice." His face went white. Then something else flickered across it. Calculation. Strategy. The mind of a lawyer, finding his next move. "You're emotional. This is pregnancy hormones. Let's talk about this at home. Don't you dare gaslight me. Not here. Not ever again." People were starting to notice. Whispers spread like fire through dry grass. Elena's father stopped mid-speech. "Lower your voice," Marcus hissed. "I will not. For 8 months you've been sleeping with another woman. She's pregnant with your child. You told her we were separated. You made me think I was crazy for suspecting something. And you want me to lower my voice?" An older society woman nearby turned to her husband and whispered loudly, "Well, this is far more interesting than the literacy speech. Should we leave?" "Absolutely not. Get me another champagne." Then Amber appeared behind Elena. Her face had transformed from heartbroken to furious. "You think you can just humiliate him? Humiliate us? You're nothing. You've always been nothing, just a connection to your daddy's money." She grabbed a bottle of vodka from the bar. Before Elena could react, cold liquid splashed across her dress, her hair, her skin. Then the lighter appeared, silver Zippo, catching the chandelier light. "If I can't have him, you don't deserve him either." The flame touched the vodka-soaked fabric, and Elena's world exploded into fire. Elena woke to the beeping of monitors and the smell of antiseptic. Her arms were wrapped in bandages. An IV dripped something that made the edges of the world soft and blurry. The first thing she did was check her belly. Please, please kick. Please be okay. The baby kicked hard, angry, alive. Elena sobbed until a nurse came running, until her father burst through the door, until she could finally choke out the words, "The baby's okay," and see the relief flood Robert Mitchell's face. He looked old, older than she had ever seen him. Whatever had happened while she was unconscious had aged him a decade. "You're safe now," he said, gripping her unbandaged hand. "You're both safe. That's all that matters. Where's Marcus?" Robert's jaw tightened. "He went home, said he was in shock, said he needed time to process. He didn't come to the hospital?" "No." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning neither wanted to name. "Dad, he just stood there. I was on fire and he just stood there. I know, sweetheart, I saw. What kind of person does that?" Robert Mitchell was a man who had built an empire from nothing. A man who had started as an illiterate laborer and ended as one of the wealthiest builders in Texas. He had not achieved that success by being soft or naive. He knew exactly what kind of person stood frozen while their pregnant wife burned. The kind of person who was hoping you wouldn't survive. Elena stared at him. The words didn't compute. Couldn't compute. I did some checking tonight, made some calls. Robert's voice was carefully controlled, the tone he used in business negotiations when he was about to destroy someone. Marcus increased your life insurance 3 months ago, $5 million. Changed the beneficiary from me to himself. That doesn't mean... He also withdrew $50,000 in cash last week. Untraceable. And Amber Sullivan? She quit her job at his firm 2 days before the gala. No forwarding address. No notice. Just vanished. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. The emails she had found. Everything changes after the gala. The life insurance. The cash withdrawal. Amber appearing out of nowhere with a lighter in her hand. Not a crime of passion. Not a jealous mistress losing control. A plan. A conspiracy. A murder attempt. I need to throw up. She barely made it to the bathroom in time. Detective Rachel Morrison arrived at 6 in the morning. She was 45 years old, 20-year veteran of the Austin Police Department's Domestic Violence Unit, and she had seen every kind of horror a human being could inflict on another. She sat beside Elena's hospital bed with a notepad and an expression of professional sympathy. Mrs. Hartwell, I need your statement, but first, there's something you should know. Amber Sullivan is claiming self-defense. She says you attacked her first and she was protecting herself. That's insane. I never touched her. I believe you, but she's already lawyered up. Your husband's firm is representing her. And there's a problem with the video footage. 300 people were recording. Yes, but the clearest angles, the ones from hotel security, show the confrontation starting mid-argument. They don't show Amber approaching you first. They show you advancing toward her, looking aggressive. Then, there's a gap. Someone bumped into a camera, and the footage skips 3 seconds. The fire starts right after that gap. So, you're telling me it looks like I started it. I'm telling you this case isn't as clear-cut as it should be. Elena felt the room spin. She was the victim. She had the burns to prove it. Yet somehow the system was already finding ways to doubt her, to twist the evidence, to protect the people who had tried to kill her. The prosecutor's office called 2 hours later. They were charging Amber with assault, not attempted murder. Second degree, not first, because intent to kill cannot be proven beyond reasonable doubt. She would be out on bail by tomorrow. Elena sat in her hospital bed, burns throbbing, baby kicking, and realized the system that should protect her was already failing. 3 days later, she moved into her father's ranch outside Austin. Robert Mitchell had money, but he had never been flashy. The house was modest by billionaire standards. 4 bedrooms, big porch, horses in the pasture, a place Elena had loved as a child and learned to escape as an adult. Now it felt like the only safe place left in the world. She filed for divorce immediately, got a restraining order against Marcus, hired a lawyer she could not actually afford because she refused her father's money out of stubborn pride. For 1 week, things seemed to stabilize. The nurse who had treated Elena at the hospital came forward with additional testimony about her injuries. Social media turned against Marcus. #Justice for Elena trended locally. Elena's divorce lawyer said they had a strong case for full custody and significant assets. Did you see Marcus's firm dropped him? Dana visited every day, bringing food and gossip and the kind of fierce loyalty that kept Elena breathing. He's toxic now. No one wants to be associated with him. I almost feel sorry for him. Girl, no. We don't do sympathy for attempted murderers. You're right. I take it back. I hope he steps on a Lego every day for the rest of his life. Barefoot at 2 in the morning, walking to the bathroom, while the toilet seat is cold. Now that's the energy. Elena started attending a support group for domestic violence survivors. She was hesitant at first. She had never been hit. Marcus had never raised a hand to her. Did she really belong there? But listening to other women's stories, she recognized her own experience in their words. The worst part wasn't the abuse, one woman said. It was how long I convinced myself it wasn't that bad. How many times I made excuses. Elena cried. For the first time, she did not feel alone. Finding your people, the ones who truly understand, is not weakness. It is strategy. Isolation is how abusers win. Community is how survivors heal. Elena was finally building her community. Then the process server arrived. 1 week after the gala, Elena answered her father's door to find a stranger in a cheap suit holding a stack of papers. Marcus was not just contesting the divorce. He was suing for primary custody of their unborn child. His evidence was devastating. Testimony from a therapist who claimed Elena had violent tendencies. A therapist Elena had never met. Photos of Elena's aggressive behavior at the gala. Screenshots from videos that made her look unhinged. A sworn statement from Amber Sullivan claiming Elena had been stalking and harassing her for months. Medical records suggesting Elena's emotional instability made her unfit to be a mother. Elena read the documents 3 times before the words made sense. Marcus was not defending himself. He was attacking. He was trying to take her baby, and he was using the system she had trusted against her. Dad, how is this possible? How can he claim I'm the dangerous one? Because he's a lawyer? Because he knows the system? Because men like him have been getting away with this for decades? Elena went to her room, locked the door, and did not come out for 2 days. She lay in bed, hands on her belly, wondering if her baby would be better off without her. If she had already failed as a mother before her child was even born. On the 2nd day, Dana broke down the door. Absolutely not. You don't get to disappear, not on my watch. He's going to take my baby, Dana. After everything he did, he's going to take my baby. Then we fight. With what? He has money, lawyers, connections. I have nothing. You have your dad, you have me, and you have something Marcus will never have. What? Dana's eyes were fierce. The truth. And I don't know about you, but in my experience, the truth is a patient bitch. She always comes out eventually. 3 weeks before Elena's due date, the custody hearing loomed like a guillotine. Her lawyer, an overworked public defender, because Elena still refused her father's money, delivered news that made her blood run cold. His team has expert witnesses, character references, financial documentation. We have your word against his. Unless you can prove he planned the attack, that he paid Amber, that this was all premeditated, I don't know what to tell you, Mrs. Hartwell. Elena sat in her father's kitchen, 8 months pregnant, burns still healing under long sleeves, and felt hope drain out of her, like water, through a cracked cup. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost did not answer. Mrs. Hartwell, my name is Jessica Thornton. I used to work with Marcus. I know what he did, and I can prove it. They met at a coffee shop the next morning. Jessica was 32, former paralegal at Marcus's firm, with the haunted eyes of someone who had seen too much and stayed silent too long. I should have come forward sooner. Her hands shook around her coffee cup. But I was scared. They threatened my career, said they'd destroy my reputation. But when I saw those videos of you on fire, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. She slid a folder across the table. Inside was everything Elena needed. Emails between Marcus and Amber going back 18 months. Bank records showing the $50,000 withdrawal, and a recording. Audio of Marcus and a colleague discussing the plan. Jessica pressed play on her phone, and Marcus's voice filled the space between them. The insurance money is just the start. Once Elena's gone, I control the trust fund for the baby. Robert Mitchell's grandchild. That's access to millions. The old man won't live forever, and when he's gone, that kid inherits everything. And Amber? Amber is useful, believes anything I tell her. After this, I'll cut her loose too. Temporary insanity plea. She'll do a few years, max. By the time she's out, I'll be remarried to someone who actually matters. Someone whose family can advance my career. Cold, man. Cold. Business is cold. Marriage, family, it's all just business. The sooner you understand that, the further you'll go. Elena listened to her husband discuss her murder like it was a merger acquisition. Her hands trembled, her vision blurred with tears. He never loved me, not even at the beginning. I was always just an investment. I'm sorry. Jessica's voice broke. I'm so sorry you had to hear that. No, I needed to hear it. I needed to stop wondering if I was the crazy one. Here's the hardest part of leaving an abusive relationship. It is not the fear. It is the hope. The hope that maybe you are wrong, maybe it will get better, maybe there is still something to save. Hearing proof that there was never anything real to save? That is devastating. But it is also freedom. You cannot heal from something you are still hoping will fix itself. Elena was done hoping. Now she was ready to fight. With Jessica's evidence, everything changed. The prosecutor upgraded charges against Amber to attempted murder. Marcus was arrested on conspiracy charges. The custody case collapsed. What judge would give custody to a man caught on tape planning his wife's death? Elena allowed herself to believe it was over, allowed herself to sleep without nightmares, allowed herself to plan for her baby's nursery without fear. She should have known better. 4 days later, Elena was at her 8-month checkup when Detective Morrison called. Mrs. Hartwell, I have bad news. Jessica Thornton recanted her testimony. All of it. She's now claiming you paid her to fabricate evidence against your husband. What? That's insane. There's more. We found $20,000 in her bank account. She says you gave it to her. And there are emails from your account to hers arranging the whole thing. I never sent those emails. I don't even have that kind of money. I believe you, but someone went to a lot of trouble to make it look like you did. Without Jessica's testimony, the case against Marcus falls apart. He'll be released by morning. Elena stood in the doctor's office, phone pressed to her ear, and watched her world collapse again. Someone had framed her. Someone had paid off the whistleblower, planted emails, destroyed the evidence that would have saved her. But who? That night, Elena paced her father's living room like a caged animal. Marcus would be free tomorrow. The custody battle would restart. Her baby was due in 3 weeks. The doorbell rang at 11 at night. Robert checked the security camera and froze. It's Amber. What the hell? Amber Sullivan stood on the porch, no makeup, wearing sweats, looking like she had not slept in days. The woman who had set Elena on fire now looked smaller somehow. Broken. Please, I need to talk to Elena. I know I don't deserve it, but please, before it's too late. Every instinct screamed no, but something in Amber's voice, something desperate and genuine, made Elena pause. 5 minutes. Dad stays in the room. Amber sat on the edge of a chair, hands shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. I didn't come forward before because I was scared, and because I was stupid, and because I thought if I just did what they told me, everything would work out. They? Who's they? Marcus. And his mother. Elena felt the room tilt. Marcus's mother, Vivian Hartwell, the elegant society woman who had smiled at Elena's wedding with teeth like a shark. Vivian has been running this from the beginning. Marcus is too stupid to plan something this complicated. He just follows orders. Always has. Amber's voice cracked. Vivian wanted your family's money, wanted access to your father's business connections. She picked you out for Marcus before you even met. That's impossible. We met at a coffee shop. It was random. It wasn't. Vivian researched your habits, your routines. She sent Marcus to that coffee shop every day for a month until you showed up. The meet, cute, was choreographed. Elena's entire 8-year relationship had been manufactured. The love story she believed in had never existed. She had been selected, cultivated, and harvested like a crop. The fire was Vivian's idea, Amber continued. She said it would look like a jealous mistress scenario. Crime of passion? I'd get temporary insanity, do a few years, and Vivian would pay for everything, set me up with a new identity afterward. Why are you telling me this now? Amber started crying. Because I realized something today. Vivian told me I'd get custody of my baby, that we'd all be a family. Her, Marcus, me, both kids. But I overheard her on the phone yesterday. Her voice broke completely. She was talking to a lawyer about removing the inconvenient pregnancies. Both of them. Yours and mine. She doesn't want either baby. She wants the appearance of grief, the sympathy, the inheritance, the control. She was going to let both of us die and blame it on complications. Elena sat in stunned silence. Vivian Hartwell had orchestrated everything. The marriage, the affair, the fire, the frame job, and both Elena and Amber were disposable. We need to go to the police, Elena said. With what? She's already destroyed Jessica's credibility. Any evidence I have, she can claim I fabricated to save myself. She has connections everywhere. Amber looked at Robert Mitchell. The only way to stop her is to beat her at her own game. She met Robert's eyes directly. You didn't get rich by being nice, Mr. Mitchell. Everyone in Austin knows that. Vivian thinks she's the most powerful person in this situation. Is she? Robert Mitchell stood very still for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone. Derek, wake up the team. We have work to do. Robert Mitchell did not become a billionaire by being kind. He became a billionaire by being smarter than everyone who tried to destroy him. At 1 a.m, his team assembled in the ranch house study. Elena had never seen this side of her father. The businessman, the strategist, the man who had survived attempts on his life during the brutal Texas construction wars of the 1980s. Here's what we know. Robert's voice was command, not conversation. Vivian Hartwell has spent 30 years building a network of control. Judges she's donated to, cops who owe her favors, journalists who run whatever story she wants. Taking her down through normal channels won't work. She owns the normal channels. His team nodded. Derek Coleman, former Army intelligence, now head of security. Miriam Lawson, private investigator who specialized in corporate espionage. Tommy Fitzgerald, forensic accountant and Elena's old college friend who had a personal grudge against the Hartwells. 20 years ago, Tommy explained, Vivian Hartwell destroyed my father's construction business, bought his debts, called them in, all at once, forced him into bankruptcy. He died 6 months later. Heart attack, they said, but I know it was shame that killed him. I've been waiting for a chance to return the favor. So what do we do? Elena asked. We don't fight her in her arena, Robert said. We drag her into ours. The plan had 3 phases. Phase 1 was following the money. Tommy had been tracking the Hartwells' financial empire for years. Shell companies, fake charities, laundered funds from sources that would make federal prosecutors salivate. They're connected to a real estate investment group under federal investigation. The Hartwells aren't the target yet, but if the feds got an anonymous tip with the right documents. Phase 2 was turning Vivian's allies. Miriam had mapped her network. Half the people who served her were loyal out of fear, not love. Her assistant, Louise Crawford, has been with her 15 years, knows everything, but 6 months ago, Louise's son got arrested. Drug possession, minor stuff. Should have been a slap on the wrist. Vivian buried it, kept Louise indebted. But the son is clean now, wants to come forward. His mother is terrified Vivian will retaliate. So we give Louise a way out, Robert said. Protection, relocation, if necessary, in exchange for everything she knows. Phase 3 was the trap. Vivian craves control and image, Robert explained. She'll want a public moment where she looks like the victim and Elena looks like the villain. She'll engineer a confrontation, provoke Elena into doing something that makes her look unstable. How do you know? Because that's what I would do. Elena stared at her father. Dad, have you always been this terrifying? Sweetheart, I built shopping malls in Texas in the 80s. Do you have any idea how many people tried to kill me over zoning permits? Wait, Tommy said. Literally kill you? There was an incident with a bulldozer. We don't talk about it. I knew about the bulldozer, Miriam muttered. Everyone in construction knows about the bulldozer, Derek added. I have questions, Elena said. So many questions. Questions later. Revenge now. Over the next week, the plan unfolded with surgical precision. Tommy's anonymous tip reached the FBI. An investigation into the Hartwells' real estate connections quietly intensified. Their accounts started getting flagged. Nothing public yet, but enough to make Vivian nervous. Derek visited Louise Crawford personally, offered full protection, a new job, relocation expenses, in exchange for every document, every recording, every secret she had accumulated in 15 years. Louise hesitated for 3 days. On day 4, Vivian screamed at her over a minor scheduling error. On day 5, Louise handed over a thumb drive containing enough evidence to destroy Vivian Hartwell 10 times over. But the most dangerous piece was Amber. She agreed to wear a wire when she met with Vivian. Guilt was a powerful motivator. I helped destroy an innocent woman's life, Amber said. The least I can do is help save it. The recording she captured was gold. Vivian's voice, clear and cold. Marcus was always weak, just like his father, but he's useful for now. Once this situation is resolved and we have control of the Mitchell assets, we can discuss his future. What about Elena's baby? What about it? Babies are leverage, nothing more. Once we establish custody, the child becomes our access point to Robert Mitchell's empire. The man isn't going to live forever. Heart condition, you know. These things can be accelerated if necessary. And my baby? A pause. Then Vivian's voice, casual as death. Let's focus on one problem at a time, dear. Document everything. Record conversations, check your state's laws first. Save screenshots, create paper trails. In situations of abuse or coercive control, evidence is not just helpful. It is survival. Your word against theirs is not fair. But proof changes everything. Elena finally had proof. Now she needed the perfect moment to use it. 2 weeks after the fire, the Austin business community held a healing gala to support victims of violent crimes. The irony was not lost on anyone. Vivian Hartwell would be there. She was on the board. So would Marcus, newly released on bail, presenting himself as the real victim of his wife's breakdown. Elena would also be there, though, very publicly. I don't know if I can face them, she admitted to her father. You won't be facing them. They'll be facing you, and they won't see it coming. The Austin Grand Hotel looked exactly as it had the night Elena burned. Same chandeliers, same marble floors, same white roses perfuming the air with sickening sweetness. She wore blue this time, sapphire, a color of calm, of depth, of hidden danger. 8 months pregnant, burns still healing under long sleeves, but she walked in with her head high. The room went silent, whispers spread like fire. Is that her? She actually came, after everything? Vivian Hartwell approached first, face composed in perfect sympathy, designer dress, pearls that probably cost more than Elena's car. Elena, dear, I'm so glad you're recovering. This whole situation has been such a tragedy for everyone involved. Has it? Of course. Marcus has been devastated. Absolutely devastated. He never meant for any of this to happen. Which part? The affair, the fire, or the life insurance policy? Vivian's smile tightened almost imperceptibly, the mask flickering. I understand you're hurting, but spreading conspiracy theories won't help anyone heal. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Actually, I think we should discuss it very publicly. Elena pulled out her phone, connected it to the venue's speaker system. Derek had arranged access in advance and pressed play. Vivian's voice filled the ballroom. Babies are leverage. Nothing more. Once we establish custody, the child becomes our access point to Robert Mitchell's empire. The man isn't going to live forever. Heart condition, you know. These things can be accelerated if necessary. 300 people heard Vivian Hartwell discuss murdering a grandfather to steal his fortune. Vivian's face went white, then red. Her composure cracked in real time in front of everyone who mattered in Austin society. That's doctored. She fabricated that. This woman is insane. There's more. Elena played the recordings of Marcus planning the fire, the evidence of shell companies, Louise Crawford's sworn testimony about 30 years of fraud. FBI agents Robert had anonymously invited stepped forward from the crowd. Vivian Hartwell, Marcus Hartwell, you're both under arrest. Marcus tried to run, made it 3 steps before Derek appeared, and put him on the ground with professional efficiency. The same society woman from the first gala turned to her husband. Well, this is much better than the literacy speech. Should we clap? Only if they do that thing where they read them their rights. I always love that part. You watch too much Law and Order. There's no such thing as too much Law and Order. Elena stood in the center of the ballroom, watching the man who tried to kill her and the woman who ordered it get handcuffed. Vivian, even now, tried to maintain control. You think this is over? You think you've won? I have lawyers, connections, I'll be out by morning. No, you won't. Elena stepped closer, voice low enough that only Vivian could hear. I know about Sarah, the woman who tried to warn Amber last year, the car accident. The FBI knows too, and they're very interested in talking to you about it. Vivian's face went gray. You tried to burn me down. Instead, you set me free. And now, I'm going to watch you burn. She turned and walked away, leaving Vivian Hartwell screaming as agents escorted her out. That night, Elena sat on her father's porch with Robert, Dana, and unexpectedly, Amber, the woman who had set her on fire, the woman who had helped save her. Texas stars scattered across a velvet sky, cicadas singing their endless summer song. I can't believe you actually did it, Dana said. You took down the whole family. We did it, all of us. Elena looked at Amber. What will you do now? Start over somewhere? Try to be better. Try to forgive myself. For what it's worth, I'm working on forgiving you. It's not easy, but I'm trying. Amber wiped her eyes. That's more than I deserve. Probably. But holding on to anger is exhausting. And I have a baby coming. I need all my energy for that. Forgiveness is not about letting someone off the hook. It is about putting down the weight so you can move forward. You do not have to forgive, fast or completely or at all. But whatever you choose, make sure it is for your healing, not theirs. Elena chose to put down the weight. She had carried enough. 3 weeks later, Elena went into labor at 2 in the morning. The contractions started like waves, building in intensity until she could not breathe through them. Her father drove. Dana held her hand in the back seat, coaching her through breathing exercises neither of them fully remembered. They made it to the hospital with 20 minutes to spare. 6 hours of labor. 6 hours of pain so intense Elena thought she might split in two. 6 hours of nurses and monitors and her father pacing the waiting room like a caged tiger. At 5:47 in the morning, Elena held her daughter for the first time. Perfect. Healthy. Screaming with life. The baby had dark hair and her mother's stubborn chin. Her eyes were blue, but the nurse said all babies had blue eyes at first. They would change. Elena did not care what color her daughter's eyes were. She only cared that those eyes were looking at her with the total trust that only newborns possess. "Do you have a name picked out?" the nurse asked. Elena thought about everything it had taken to get here. The fire, the betrayal, the fight, the survival. Hope, she said. Her name is Hope. The next 6 months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and tiny miracles. Elena moved into a small apartment near her father's ranch. She went back to teaching part-time, art classes for trauma survivors at a community center. Hope hit every milestone, sleeping through the night most days, smiling at 4 months, laughing at 5. The trials concluded one by one. Vivian Hartwell received 25 years for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and a dozen other charges. She would be 90 before she was eligible for parole. Marcus Hartwell received 18 years for conspiracy, insurance fraud, and accessory to attempted murder. He would be in his 50s when he got out, assuming he survived that long. Vivian's network had long memories. Amber Sullivan received 5 years, reduced for cooperation. She would be eligible for parole in 3. Elena did not know how to feel about that. Some days she hoped Amber would rebuild her life. Other days she remembered the flames and felt nothing but cold anger. Both feelings were valid. Healing was not linear. Elena testified at every trial, faced her husband and mother-in-law in open court, told her story calmly, clearly, completely. The prosecutor asked her on the stand, "Mrs. Mitchell, what do you want the jury to understand about what happened to you?" Elena looked at the jury, 12 strangers, who would decide the fate of the people who had tried to kill her. "I want them to understand that I trusted someone. I loved someone. And that person saw me not as a human being, but as a resource to be exploited and discarded. I want them to understand that this happens to women every day. We are manipulated and gaslit and made to doubt ourselves until we don't know what's real anymore. And when we finally see the truth, when we finally fight back, we are called crazy, emotional, vindictive." She paused. "I am not crazy. I am not emotional. I am not vindictive. I am a mother who survived, and I am asking you to make sure the people who tried to take everything from me face consequences for their actions." They did. Dana visited every week, bringing wine Elena could not drink while nursing and gossip Elena desperately needed. "So I joined a dating app," Dana announced one evening. "After everything I've been through, you're voluntarily entering the dating pool? Some of us don't have trust issues the size of Texas. Some of us haven't been set on fire by their husband's mistress." "Fair point. I'll delete the app." "No, don't. Someone should believe in love. Just maybe do a background check first." "You're joking." "I'm really not." Elena continued attending the domestic violence support group, but now as a co-facilitator, helping other women tell their stories, helping them see that they were not alone, not crazy, not overreacting. A new member came to a meeting, shaking and uncertain. I keep wondering if I'm overreacting. He's never hit me, but the way he talks to me, the way he makes me feel crazy. Elena took her hand. Abuse isn't always physical. The kind that lives in your head, that makes you doubt yourself, that's just as real. You're not overreacting. You're not crazy. And you deserve to be believed. If you recognize yourself in stories like this one, if you are wondering whether your situation counts as abuse, it counts. Emotional abuse, financial control, isolation, gaslighting. These are all real forms of harm. You do not need bruises to need help. And asking for help is not weakness. It is the first step toward freedom. Elena had walked through that fire, literal and metaphorical. She had come out the other side. 6 months after Hope was born, on an ordinary Tuesday, Elena's life changed again. She picked Hope up from daycare, stopped at the grocery store, drove home to her small apartment. Normal day, normal routine, normal life. She was unlocking her door when she noticed it was already unlocked. Elena knew she had locked it. She always locked it. The paranoia that comes with surviving an attempt on your life never fully fades. She stepped back, pulled out her phone, ready to call 911. A voice from inside stopped her. "You can put the phone down. I'm not going to hurt you." Elena knew that voice. She had heard it on recordings. Had learned that it belonged to a woman named Sarah who had tried to warn Amber about the Hartwells last year. A woman who was supposed to be dead. Elena pushed open the door. Sarah Lawson sat on the couch, looking like she had been waiting for hours. Mid-30s, elegant, even in jeans, and a simple blouse. The bearing of someone who had survived things that should have killed her. "You're supposed to be dead," Elena said. "I got better." Hope squirmed in her carrier. Elena set her down, but did not move further into the apartment. "Who are you? Really?" "My name is Sarah Lawson. 12 years ago, I was Vivian Hartwell's first project. I married her older son, Marcus's brother William. Same playbook. Love bombing, isolation, the slow destruction of everything I was. Marcus has a brother. Had. William died in a boating accident when I started asking too many questions about the family finances. I was supposed to die too. Car accident, just like you heard, but I saw it coming. Faked my death. Disappeared." Elena's mind raced. Everything she had learned about the Hartwells, everything she had uncovered, was just the surface. "Then why are you here, now?" Sarah stood, moved to the window, looked out at the parking lot like she was checking for surveillance. "Because Vivian Hartwell isn't the end. She's just a regional manager. The family she married into, the original Hartwells, they're part of something bigger, a network that's been doing this for generations. Finding vulnerable families, inserting themselves, draining wealth, eliminating loose ends." Elena felt cold despite the Texas heat. Vivian is in prison, but the network isn't. And they're very interested in tying up the loose ends she left behind. Sarah turned to face Elena. "That includes you, your father, and your daughter." Hope made a small sound. Elena picked her up instinctively, holding her close. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the happy ending isn't the end. It's the beginning of the next fight." Sarah handed Elena a folder. Inside were photos, documents, names she did not recognize, a web of connections that spanned decades. "I've been building this case for 12 years, waiting for someone else to survive long enough to help me, someone who has the resources and the will to finish what I started." She looked Elena in the eyes. "Your father has the money. I have the information. And you have something neither of us has anymore. Innocence. People believe you. People trust you. That makes you the most dangerous weapon we have." Elena looked at the folder, looked at Hope, sleeping peacefully in her arms, looked at this woman who should be dead, but was not. And if I say no, then I disappear again. And eventually, they come for you anyway. The only question is whether you want to be ready. Long silence. Hope made a small sound, the soft sigh of a baby, dreaming of a world where she was safe and loved. Elena thought about everything she had survived, everything she had lost, everything she had fought to rebuild. She thought about the woman she had been, the one who closed that laptop at 2 a.m. and convinced herself she was imagining things. She was not that woman anymore. She was the woman who walked through fire and came out the other side. "Tell me everything," Sarah smiled, the first real smile Elena had seen on her face. "Get comfortable. This is going to take a while." Over the next 3 weeks, Sarah revealed the scope of what Elena was facing. The Hartwell family had been running the same scheme for 4 generations. Find wealthy families with single daughters or widows. Insert a charming man, isolate the target from her support system, drain her resources, eliminate her when she became inconvenient. They had done it dozens of times, maybe hundreds. Vivian had refined the process, made it more efficient, but she had not invented it. The original Hartwells came from old money, Sarah explained. Railroad fortune, 19th century, but they lost most of it in the Depression. Instead of accepting their reduced circumstances, they decided to rebuild through marriage. Strategic marriages, profitable marriages. And when the marriages stopped being profitable, accidents happened. Exactly. The network extended beyond the Hartwells themselves. Lawyers who helped structure the financial arrangements, doctors who signed convenient death certificates, law enforcement officials who looked the other way, judges who ruled in their favor. Vivian is the most visible piece, but she's not the head. That would be her father-in-law, William Hartwell Sr. He's 93 years old, lives in a compound in the hill country, and has never been connected to any of the deaths. He's too careful, too insulated. How do we get to him? Sarah smiled grimly. That's where your father comes in. Robert Mitchell had been doing his own investigation. The construction industry had long memories, and Robert had connections that went back decades. William Sr. tried to recruit me once, Robert admitted, 30 years ago. Said he could make me very wealthy if I was willing to be flexible about certain things. I told him to go to hell. Is that why they targeted Elena? Sarah asked. Probably. Revenge and opportunity combined. They saw my daughter as both a payday and a punishment. The plan they developed was complex. It required federal involvement, witness protection for Sarah, coordination with agencies that had been investigating pieces of the network for years without connecting them. It required Elena to testify. Again, this time not just about what happened to her, but about the entire conspiracy she had uncovered. It was dangerous. The network had eliminated people who knew far less than Elena now knew. But Elena was done being afraid. They already tried to kill me once, she told her father. If I spend the rest of my life hiding, they win anyway. At least this way, I'm fighting back. You have Hope to think about. I'm thinking about Hope. I'm thinking about what kind of world I want her to grow up in. One where women are targets who stay quiet, or one where women fight back and win. Robert looked at his daughter, the little girl who had once painted flowers on his construction equipment, the woman who had walked through fire and refused to burn. Your mother would be so proud of you. I hope so. The federal case took months to build. Elena testified before grand juries. She provided documents and recordings and connections that prosecutors had been trying to establish for years. Sarah Lawson was officially brought back from the dead, given witness protection, and testified about the 12 years she had spent documenting the network's activities. One by one, the pieces fell into place. William Hartwell Sr. was arrested on his 94th birthday. 73 counts of conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to murder, spanning 5 decades. He died in custody before the trial, his heart finally giving out. But the network he had built did not die with him. 18 more people were arrested: lawyers, doctors, law enforcement officials, judges. The corruption ran so deep that 3 separate jurisdictions had to coordinate prosecutions. Marcus Hartwell, already serving 18 years, was charged with additional crimes. His sentence extended to 35 years. He would die in prison. Amber Sullivan, still serving her reduced sentence, testified against people who had been involved in the network's activities. Her cooperation further reduced her time. She would be released in 2 years. Elena did not know how to feel about that, but she had learned that feelings did not have to be simple or resolved. She could feel angry and compassionate at the same time. She could want justice and also want healing. Both things could be true. 2 years after the fire, Elena stood in the Austin Grand Hotel ballroom for the annual Literacy Gala, her father's event, now co-hosted by the foundation Elena had established. The foundation supported survivors of domestic abuse. It provided legal aid, housing assistance, job training, and most importantly, community. Women helping women. Survivors becoming advocates. Elena had told her story hundreds of times now, in courtrooms and conferences, in support groups and media interviews. Each telling was painful. Each telling was necessary. Tonight she was giving the keynote address. The ballroom looked different to her now. The chandeliers did not sparkle with indifferent beauty. The marble floors did not feel like a crime scene. The white roses smelled sweet instead of sickening. She had reclaimed this space, turned it from the place where she almost died into the place where she helped others live. Hope was 3 years old now. She sat in the front row with Robert, wearing a tiny dress that Dana had picked out, fidgeting with the attention span of a toddler. Elena looked at her daughter's face, so trusting and full of wonder, and felt the weight of everything it had taken to get here. The audience fell silent as she approached the podium. 3 years ago, Elena began, I stood in this room wearing an emerald green dress, 7 months pregnant, believing I had a happy marriage and a bright future. I was wrong about almost everything, but I was right about one thing. She paused, letting the silence stretch. I was right to fight back. She told her story, not all of it. The details were too raw, too personal, but enough. Enough to connect, enough to inspire, enough to matter. She talked about the warning signs she had ignored, the gaslighting, the isolation, the way Marcus had made her doubt her own perceptions until she did not know what was real anymore. I spent 8 years making myself invisible, Elena said, shrinking to fit someone else's vision of who I should be, and it almost killed me. She looked at the exact spot where Amber had thrown vodka on her, where the lighter had flicked, where the flames had consumed her dress. But I survived. My daughter survived. And now I'm standing here in this place that almost became my grave to tell you something important. She leaned into the microphone. Trust your instincts. Speak your truth. Leave before it's too late, because you deserve better than someone who makes you doubt your worth. The applause was thunderous. Elena waited for it to fade. I spent months asking myself what I did wrong, what I could have changed. Then I realized something important. You cannot love someone into being good. You cannot sacrifice enough to make someone value you. All you can control is how you respond when they show you who they are. She looked at the faces watching her, saw her journey reflected in their eyes. I almost didn't survive learning that lesson, but I did survive, and survival That's everything. More applause. Longer, louder. People ask me if I'm angry, if I'm bitter, if I hate the people who tried to destroy me. She paused. I don't. Anger takes energy I'd rather spend on building than destroying. Bitterness poisons the person holding it more than the target, and hate would make me like them. She let that sink in. Instead, I choose grace, not naive trust, not blind forgiveness, but wise compassion. I choose to believe people can change, that women like Amber Sullivan can serve their time and build new lives, that my daughter can grow up knowing her father's mistakes don't define her. Her voice strengthened. And I choose power, not the power that controls others, but the power that comes from controlling yourself, your narrative, your future, your worth. The ballroom was silent, reverent, hanging on every word. The night I burned, I was stripped of everything. My marriage, my identity as a wife, my naive belief that love conquers all, my safety, my dignity, almost my life. Elena touched her arms where scars still marked her skin, faded now but never fully gone. But from those ashes, something stronger emerged. Not who I was always meant to be. She gestured to the ballroom, to the venue that had almost become her grave, but had instead become her cathedral. This place tried to kill me. Now it saves lives. That's transformation. That's the power we all have to take the worst things that happen to us and turn them into purpose. She looked at her daughter in the front row. Hope had stopped fidgeting, was watching her mother with wide, serious eyes. To everyone watching who's in a dangerous situation, you're not imagining it. You're not overreacting. You're not responsible for someone else's choices. You deserve safety. You deserve respect. You deserve life. And if you need help, we're here. This foundation. Hundreds of organizations like ours. We believe you. We'll help you. You don't have to survive alone. She ended with the words that had become her motto, her mantra, her truth. They tried to burn me down. Instead, they set me free. And I'm using that freedom to help set others free too. The ballroom erupted. 500 people, standing, cheering, some crying, some laughing. All of them moved. After the gala, after the guests left, after the final interviews and last handshakes, Elena stood alone in the ballroom. She walked to the spot, the exact marble tile where she had burned, where the vodka had ignited, where her old life had ended. She knelt down, touched the cool stone. Thank you, she whispered, for showing me who I really was, for burning away everything false, for teaching me that I could survive anything. She stood, brushed off her dress, turned to leave. Robert waited by the door with Hope, asleep in his arms. Ready to go home? Yeah, this one's probably having princess dreams that don't involve literacy galas. They walked out together, father and daughter and granddaughter, past the spot where Elena had almost died, through the ballroom that had witnessed her destruction and her rebirth. Outside, the Texas stars scattered across a velvet sky. The same stars that had shone on the worst night of her life now shone on one of the best. Elena looked up at them and thought about everything she had survived, everything she had lost, everything she had built from the ashes. She was not the same woman who had closed that laptop at 2 a.m. and convinced herself she was imagining things. She was not the same woman who had made excuses for a man who did not love her. She was not the same woman who had shrunk herself to fit someone else's expectations. She was Elena Mitchell, mother, advocate, survivor, fighter, and she was just getting started. Hope stirred in Robert's arms, opened her eyes, smiled sleepily at her mother. Mama? Hey, baby girl. We're going home. Okay. Hope snuggled closer to her grandfather. Love you, Mama. Love you too, sweetheart. More than anything. They drove through the Austin night, past the hospital where Hope was born, past the coffee shop where Elena once met a man she thought she loved, past all the landmarks of a life that had burned and risen again. Elena watched the city lights pass by and felt something she had not felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of ignorance, of not knowing what darkness lurked behind charming smiles. The peace of knowledge, of survival, of strength tested and proven. They tried to burn her down. Instead, they created something they never expected. Someone who burns back. 5 years after the fire, on a spring morning that smelled of Texas wildflowers and new beginnings, Elena Mitchell married again. His name was James Cooper. He was a social worker she had met through the foundation, a gentle man with kind eyes who had lost his first wife to cancer and understood grief and healing in ways that Elena needed. They had dated for 2 years before he proposed. Elena made him wait another year after that. She was not rushing anything ever again. The wedding was small. 50 people, her father's ranch, wildflowers instead of roses. Hope, now 8 years old, was the flower girl. She took her duties very seriously, scattering petals with precision and glaring at anyone who was not paying proper attention. Donna was the maid of honor. She had finally found love herself. A woman named Patricia, who taught elementary school and thought Dana's jokes were actually funny. Sarah Lawson came, out of witness protection now that the network had been dismantled. She brought her own daughter, a girl she had been pregnant with when she faked her death 12 years ago. The girl was 11 now, had Sarah's eyes and her father William's chin, and had no idea how lucky she was to be alive. Even Amber Sullivan came. She had been released from prison 2 years ago, had moved to New Mexico, had started over with a new name and a new life. Her daughter, Marcus's daughter, was 7 years old and had never met her father. Never would. Elena had invited Amber herself. Not because she had forgotten what Amber did, she would never forget, but because holding on to anger was exhausting, and Elena had better things to do with her energy. Amber cried during the ceremony. Elena pretended not to notice. The vows were simple. No dramatic promises, no flowery language, just truth. I promise to see you, Elena said to James. The real you, every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I promise to be worthy of that seeing, James replied. To never make you doubt yourself, to never make you small, to always, always choose you. They kissed. The crowd cheered. Hope loudly informed everyone that kissing was gross, but she supposed it was okay this once. At the reception, Robert Mitchell gave a toast. When Elena was a little girl, he said, she used to paint flowers on my construction equipment, drove my foreman crazy, but I never stopped her, because I could see, even then, that she was making something ugly into something beautiful. He looked at his daughter, radiant and white, laughing at something James had whispered in her ear. That's what she does, what she's always done. Takes the hard things, the broken things, the things that should have destroyed her, and makes them into something beautiful, into hope. He raised his glass. To Elena, who walked through fire and taught us all what it means to rise from the ashes. The guests echoed the toast. Elena wiped her eyes and pretended she was not crying. Later, as the sun set over the Texas hills and the party wound down into quiet conversations and slow dances, Elena found a moment alone. She walked to the edge of her father's property, where the land dropped away and you could see for miles in every direction. the same view she had looked at as a child, dreaming of a future she could not quite imagine. The future had turned out differently than she expected. Harder, more painful, but also richer, more meaningful, more real. She touched the scars on her arms, faded now but never completely gone. They had become a part of her, like hope, like the foundation, like the community of survivors she had built, like the strength she had discovered in herself when everything else was stripped away. She heard footsteps behind her. James, coming to find her. You okay? Yeah, just thinking. About what? Elena looked at the horizon, at the last light of day, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, the colors of fire, the colors of transformation, about how you never know what you're capable of until you have no other choice, about how the worst things that happen to you can become the best things if you let them, about how survival isn't the end of the story, it's just the beginning. James took her hand. His grip was warm and steady and exactly right. Ready to go back to the party? In a minute. I just want to stand here and be grateful for a little while longer. They stood together in silence, watching the sun set on the old life and rise on the new one. Elena Mitchell had walked through fire. She had emerged, not unscathed, but transformed. Not a victim, not just a survivor, a phoenix, and her story was just beginning. If this story moved you, if it made you think, feel, or remember something important, do me a small favor. Hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that stories like this matter. Drop a comment below. Tell me what moment hit you hardest. Was it when Marcus stood frozen while Elena burned? When she discovered the truth about her mother-in-law? Or when she finally fought back and won? Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know who's silently struggling, who needs to know that survival is possible, that fighting back is worth it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell. Because we have more stories coming. Stories of betrayal and justice. Stories of women who refuse to stay silent. Stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very last word. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for believing that stories have power. Closing disclaimer, this content was researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful lessons and authentic storytelling experiences to our audience. Every character, every twist, every moment of drama was carefully crafted to not only entertain but to illuminate truths about strength, survival, and the human spirit. We believe stories change lives. We believe your time deserves respect. And we believe that when you leave this video, you should carry something valuable with you. Until next time, remember, they can try to burn you down, but you get to decide whether you rise from the ashes. See you in the next story.